We're now coming to the end of this 2.5 days conference, and we will be having closing comments from the two organizers. But before I invite Kostas and Schengen up to the podium, I'd just like to say that it's been a pleasure and an honor to be your discussion facilitator during this conference. And just a word of warning, I am going back to Rome with so many story ideas from this conference that it is very likely I will be bugging quite a lot of you for interviews in the very near future. And with that, may I ask Kostas to give his closing remarks?
Good afternoon. I was hoping that Schengen would speak first, because speaking after David Nabarro is a challenge. So I'm fully aware of the challenge. The other thing is, in the openings, we usually start with the protocol, distinguished excellencies, your honor, etc. After 3 days in this conference, I think we can safely start the salutations with comrades in zero hunger and good nutrition for all. How about that? I would like also to start this the way I started my opening remarks, which to thank the teams, Schengen and his team, and Kundavi and her team from FAO, for bringing us all together in this really exciting conference. So thank you very much, everybody that has been involved. You did a fantastic job. As this conference is drawing to a close, I would like to reflect on what we learned and what it means for our work. We started off with a rather gloomy picture of slow progress and even a reversal of progress in our fight against hunger and malnutrition. We talked about persistent hunger and the rapid rise of prevalence of obesity and diet-related non-communicable diseases, an alarming situation. We also heard about the challenges that hamper and risk setting us back even more: population growth, climate change, urbanization, changing diets and lifestyles, and the hardship caused by natural and man-made crises and conflict. In this conference, we asked some hard questions. Are we doing enough? Are we doing the right things? Are we doing things right? Do we truly understand the problems we are dealing with, for example, in the case of obesity and NCDs? Do we know what works, what doesn't work, and why? But above all, how can we do better? What will it take to regain the momentum and to accelerate, a key word in this conference, progress? While it is obvious from this conference that all of us gathered here care about ending hunger and malnutrition, the bigger question is, why should other people, especially those in decision-making positions, care about the plight of the hungry and malnourished? It's a question that Harold also asked in his presentation. Our generation is better positioned than any other generation before us to address the challenge of hunger and malnutrition in all its forms. We have the knowledge and the tools to take action. We have repeatedly made the case for nutrition. We know that for every dollar invested in nutrition, we get many, many dollars in return. My number here is 16. If this were a business, it would attract a lot of investment, and yet not enough resources are dedicated to nutrition. The 2018 Global Nutrition Report, launched here in this event, shows that less than 1% of official development assistance goes to undernutrition and less than 0.01% goes to overweight and obesity. It is completely unacceptable considering the enormous burden and the societal cost of malnutrition. My first observation is that the most critical accelerator is people. We need people, including decision makers, or especially decision makers, outside the nutrition community, to care about nutrition as much as they care about the economy, jobs, health, education, and security. We need to double our efforts to mobilize, to engage with decision makers, to make a more convincing case of why and how we can sustainably resolve these problems by 2030 or even before. I would like to make a second critical evaluation. Despite the malnutrition problems that we see today, we need to acknowledge that we made enormous progress in developments in agriculture and food systems over the last decades, which have allowed us to keep up almost with high population growth. It has enabled us to support a population that has grown to 7.3 billion people. My third observation is that we will need to do more and continue to invest in agriculture and food systems because the global population is expected to grow further to 10 billion by 2050. We still need to produce more food in an efficient way for this burgeoning population, while at the same time minimizing food loss and waste. But we need to do things very differently. There is a new phase for agriculture and food systems being developed. It is no longer just about increasing production, productivity, profitability, and feeding people. It is about people eating well for their own development. It is about people having access to healthy diets. It is about people and the planet thriving now and in the future. If we want to end hunger and malnutrition by 2030, then the following three goals need to become part of this new phase of agriculture and food systems. 1, provide safe and diverse foods that support optimal nutrition and health for everybody. 2, produce nutritious food in a way that are affordable by the vulnerable and the poor consumers and provide incomes and livelihoods for poor producers. 3, conserve the natural resource base and mitigate climate risk because the natural environment is the bedrock of our food systems. Now, what does this new phase of agriculture and food systems look like? Among others, we should envision food systems that value nutritious crops and animal source foods, that promote diverse diets because diversity supports resilience and promotes health of people, community, society, and the natural environment. A growth and acceleration strategy based on diversity loss, is high risk and unsustainable. Respect and promote traditional local food cultures and traditions, support short and efficient supply chains that are less energy intensive, allow us to rebalance the affordability of healthy diets, and provide for better management and use of pesticides, agrochemicals, and additives. However, when thinking about acceleration, we also need to think about the agents of change. Who's going to do all this that will help bring about this transformation? Certainly, the private sector is at the core of food systems. Sometimes we juxtapose small farmers and private sector. Small farmers are an important component of private sector. We need to get the private sector and all the wide range of actors that make up that sector more fully engaged around these three new goals. Governments need to put in place incentives and disincentives through policies and regulations to shape private sector decisions and behaviors. Governments, donors, and private sectors should invest in research and innovation for agriculture and food systems to deliver healthy diets. We not only need technological innovations, but also social innovation and business innovation. There is also exciting new research that is reshaping the field of nutrition. The human microbiome, epigenetics, and behavioral science are transforming our understanding of how to tackle malnutrition in all its forms. We need to reflect on the policy implications of this new understanding. Civil society is also key. Governments, private sector, and researchers have their own interests and agendas. Civil society, on the other hand, operate in the interest of those whose voices are not heard. They ensure there is a mutual social contract of checks and balances and hold governments, private sector, donors, and other key players accountable. Consumers and citizens are at the heart of food systems, but they need better knowledge to make informed decisions about their diets. We are living in a new era. Social media and technology are changing the generation's purchasing behavior, aspirations, and culture. These technologies could serve as important accelerators if properly managed. Finally, how to make acceleration and change happen. The overarching issue is to change the face of agriculture and food systems and speed up progress. We heard many examples of countries that are accelerating their efforts towards ending hunger and malnutrition. We need to ensure that these efforts are properly evaluated for their impacts so that we all can learn, share, and upscale in other settings. But there is ample evidence that acceleration is not just about sector-specific policies and actions. Acceleration will happen when different policies and actions come together. It is about policy coherence and collaboration. There should be shared goals and mutual accountability across actors and decision makers. In summary, I would like to highlight 4 take-home messages. 1, we cannot afford not to act, not to fail in accelerating our actions. Let's shape this new phase of agriculture and food systems to one that is healthy for humans and the planet. We must engage various agents of change and hold each other accountable. And finally, let's put countries at the center of our learning and knowledge sharing. We have many good global opportunities to move our actions quickly. The SDGs, the ICN2, the Decade of Action on Nutrition, the Malabo Declaration, IFPRI's Global Compact 2025, and next year we will even have another decade, the Decade of Family Farming. Consider these decades as the vehicles for accelerating impact. FAO, IFPRI, and other partners are committed to those opportunities. In our increasingly interconnected world, strengthened agriculture and food systems have a critical role to play in achieving the targets of the Sustainable Development Goals. Despite the daunting challenges, the opportunities to respond to the needs of food security and nutrition in planetary constraints and social justice and equity are enormous. A collective and integrated approach, much of what the SDG agenda calls for, is imperative. On behalf of FAO, we have been extremely pleased to see the level of participation and engagement from countries, individuals, and organizations at this global event. This conference has been an important moment to take stock of where we are and what we have left to do. Let each and every one of us accelerate our commitments to working together. I wish you safe travels back to your home country. Thank you for your attention.